Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by Mark O'Haire, as always, and Miguel Delaney. Adrian Clark is sitting out this week, so the two guys will talk you through the King's Coronation, plus all the Premier League weekend's action as well. Looking forward to some brilliant games. The title race is still going, but it may be over after this weekend, depending on results. Before we get into all the action, I want to point you into the direction of a product we spoke about last week, but Matchbook have launched something called Matchbook Zero. This is basically effectively giving you the sort of middle ground between a sports book and a betting exchange. You can see here, if you're watching on the YouTube stream, that this is the Matchbook Zero pricing. We currently cover football and horse racing. So the win, draw, win markets are available currently on Matchbook Zero. And you can see that you can bet up to £20 with zero margin and 0% commission. So all football matches are available 48 hours ahead of the game. So well worth checking out. Again, it gives you that background. There is only one price there. The back and the lay prices are the same because there is zero margin and 0% commission. If you have any questions, check out the link in the description or matchbook.com/0. We will move on to the podcast. We'll have a special Matchbook Zero section about halfway through, replacing the long shot section. But there's some decent games this week, as I touched on. Manchester City versus Leeds, Newcastle versus Arsenal, West Ham versus Manchester United, and Fulham versus Leicester, the four marquee games we are going to cover. If you are watching on YouTube, do hit that like button and get involved on the live stream. Or indeed, if you're watching after, do comment your best bet of the weekend. We will start with Manchester City versus Leeds. Gives us a great chance to talk about a storyline developing from the away side here. But we'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Manchester City as short as 1.19. Leeds available at 19.0. The draw is 9.2. You can back both teams to score, yes, available at even money with no 1.88. The Asian handicap line sees Leeds get 2.25 goal head start at 1.9. And the total for this game is 3.5, shaded towards the over. So, yeah, Mark, take it away here. Big Sam's back at Leeds United. He's got 4 games, about the shortest he's ever had to try and keep a team up. Can he do it?
I'm sure he can, but will he? I'm not so sure. I think there's a fair argument to say Leeds have either panicked, or you could also make an argument to say that Leeds have been kind of pushed into this position by their recent run and their performances. I think Javi Gracia was handed a bit of a hospital pass. I think he's a capable coach who's more than good enough to kind of keep a team up in the Premier League, but probably not after kind of coming after Marcelo Bielsa and Jesse Marsch. You know, he's completely different in terms of style and fit, and so I portion a large blame of why Leeds have been struggling this season to their director of football, Victor Orta, who was sacked this midweek after a series of blunders, really. Just kind of shows us yet again that there's absolutely no succession planning taking place in the Premier League these days, which is bonkers considering the sums of money that's splashing around. It's just incredible to think Leeds have gone from Bielsa to Allardyce in 14 months, and kind of gives you an idea of the predicament they're in and the lack of forward planning. But yeah, it is a last throw of the dice. I guess you can kind of understand it with Angus Kinnear, the chief executive of Leeds, having worked with him before, so there is a connection there. But they must understand that this could be a very, very expensive gamble, because Allardyce isn't a guarantee of survival or safety. He's not guaranteed to make an instant impact. As he say, it's the shortest time he's going to have to try and turn a club around. Hearing him in the press conference, he sounds very confident in his own ability to do that. But I just look, you know, he was a great success, it has to be said, in doing similar jobs at Everton, Palace, Sunderland as well. But, you know, he had a lot of time there. And actually his last gig at West Brom, he was brought in before Christmas, with Albion having won just once before. In his 26 games, they won just 4 times. They were relegated with 3 rounds of football still to play. In his matches, his 26 games, they completed the fewest passes, had the worst passing accuracy, played the highest percentage of long balls, and conceded the most goals. So, you know, it doesn't seem to sort of fit the style and the suitability of the Leeds squad right now, which would be a surprise, would be a red flag, I guess, for me immediately. In terms of an instant impact at Albion, he had 4 games. His first 4 games, they picked up 1 point, they scored 1 goal and conceded 13. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to try and turn around there at Leeds right now. I guess they can probably treat this weekend as a bit of a free hit. I'm certainly not expecting an immediate boost or turnaround from Leeds. They've probably had, 3 training sessions in charge, perhaps, before the weekend. Eager to see how he sets his team up and tries to stop Man City. I thought West Ham did a reasonable job of trying to do that midweek, despite sort of missing key players but to pull out late on. But yeah, City are in that kind of mood right now, aren't they, where they're just winning relentlessly and just don't look like being beaten. So As you said, with the pre-match prices, it's very difficult to sort of engineer something of real promise out of this match. I looked at potentially taking a first half angle here because Man City are involved in Champions League commitments next midweek, so they should be completely focused on getting this match won and getting this match won as early as possible, so they can turn attention elsewhere, perhaps resting, rotating in the second half. So, something similar to what we saw against Leicester, actually, when they blew Leicester off the park in the first 45 minutes. Pep rang the changes at half-time, and it's a very different second half. So I was looking at Man City -1 on the Asian handicap in the first half, which would give you about a 2.1 price. Now, City have led at half-time in 6 of 8 at home to the bottom half. Would have been 6 of 7 before the West Ham game, where, of course, they hit the woodwork twice before the break and probably unlucky not to score. They've averaged 1.86 goals before half-time. Against those 8 bottom half teams at the Etihad. They scored twice or more in 4 of the 8 and led by 2 goals or more in 4 of the 8 as well. So out of those 8 games, you would only have lost your stake twice. You've been paid out 4 times and got a push twice. I think that's reasonable enough, really. If you want to be a bit more aggressive, you could possibly look at Man City scoring over 1.5 goals before half time at around 2.5, which is obviously quite appealing. But I'm probably playing it a little bit safer here. But I'm just wary of kind of taking anything sort of Leeds-based, Leeds to score, not to score, Man City to win to 0. Just City have been a little bit sloppy, actually, in the last 20 games or so. I think they've only kept 4 or 5 clean sheets in the Premier League, which is quite surprising, really. And as we saw in the second half against Leicester, if they do sort of down tools and start focusing elsewhere, there will be opportunities for Leeds, whether it's counter-attacks, transitions, set pieces, etc. So, I think City win this quite comfortably, regardless of Allardyce there or not.
Okay, Mark's not going for the new manager. Bounce immediately. Manchester City -1.0 in the first half, 2.1. A little bit of an angle there with a view to the Champions League, perhaps. So, yeah, Miguel, take it away. And I have a question for you in general, just on Sam Allardyce and his quotes about comparing himself to Klopp, Guardiola, and Arteta. Was that purposely done to take the pressure off the players, or is he just genuinely saying that for the crack?
I'd say it's a bit of both. Certainly, there's an element.
I was trying to say, yeah.
And with Allardyce, I mean, we don't have to go back too far for similar comments, and they've been right through his career. We all remember the Allardyce one. He is not shy about his own abilities and feels like he should have been given much higher jobs throughout his career, really. So, as regards taking the pressure off his players, I mean, it was going to bring making himself feel better. Well, I mean, it's not necessarily a criticism of Allardyce to say that, I mean, to I suppose reflect what Mark is saying as well. I mean, to go from Bielsa to Allardyce in this short a time is an indictment of Leeds and their strategy, and I think actually it reflects on one of the reasons why Javi Gracia ended as it did. Because I agree, I think he's a good coach. I was surprised how it went, but I mean, if you stand back, basically, and this is where it's quite interesting this weekend. It was a squad built for Bielsa, and then actually, arguably to a greater degree, given some of the signings they made, built to Jesse Marsh, which was, a pressing squad running. Even some of the limited players, you can get away with them in the right system, which involves high pressing. That didn't suit Gracia, and it's going to be a big question whether it suits Allardyce, because Gracia was like almost a halfway house between Bielsa and Allardyce, and now Allardyce is the extreme end, where it will be, as in the famous quote we had in a podcast recently, where what structure does he set up in his team? The structure is to not get beat. That's not a structure, that's an outcome. But what he means is that they're going to be. It's going to be rigorously organized defense, hard to break down, and the big question, as Marcus touched on, is whether you can do that in the space of 3 training sessions. Sometimes, though, just because of the intensity of the first few days, that can happen in these situations more in the first game than in any other. Where it's almost like the players are kind of shocked into it, even if there's a kind of bigger concerns over the longer term. It is, of course, I mean, it's amazing for his first task as regards this. He's got the hardest match in Europe right now. But to my mind, just because of the way he works, I mean, Gracia, again, what is a capable coach, given that English isn't his first language, he doesn't necessarily have, how to put this, the charisma that Allardyce has in a Premier League setting. And Allardyce can have that effect. I'm sort of in two minds here, whether it's all set up. Everything I've said are all the factors for another City thrashing. I think what's their average? I think it's at least 3 goals a game average in the last 11 games. Something like, I don't know the exact figure, but it's around that. Or just for one game, Allardyce frustrates him. And I suppose the extension of that is it's a twist in the title race. But to allow both possibilities, like I know what Mark is saying about the clean sheet, but that's the City's lack of clean sheets, but that's this is a Leeds team that will be sitting deep. But to allow for basically either a City thrashing or maybe a shock 0-0 draw, I'm going to go for both teams to score no.
Okay, yeah, 1.89 covering both angles. Perhaps City going out and beating Leeds well, or maybe Leeds sitting in for a large period of the game. It's a tough one to call. We might go along with Mark on this one, the Man City minus 1.0 first half angle. I do like that Champions League angle. Both teams to score no is available at 1.89. It's a fascinating game. I'm very interested just in general. They will sit deep, but who is that front 2 or 3 going to be? Is Bamford going to start? Somerville, Garnacho? It's a fascinating tie in store. And another fascinating tie is Sunday 4:30 kickoff, a game not affected and is staying with its TV schedule here. 4:30, it's Newcastle versus Arsenal. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. You can back Newcastle United favourites at 2.52. Arsenal are 2.84. The draw is 3.9. Both teams to score is available. Yes is heavily favoured in that market at 1.58. The Asian handicap line sees it's effectively a draw no bet market with Newcastle again favoured at 1.85, and the total for this game is 2.5, shaded a bit towards the over. So yeah, Miguel, give us your take on Arsenal at the moment. Look, they've gone through maybe a bad spell. You probably at the moment can't get a more perfect game than Chelsea at home, just because you have the atmosphere, plus you have a team that you're well capable of beating at the moment. Where are Arsenal at? Because this is a tough game. You can see by the odds that Newcastle are favourites to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, it was a perfect game for them in that regard, but in an imperfect setting. And to be fair to Arsenal, it would have been very easy for them, I think, to just continue the form of the previous 4 games and really struggle in that match. They didn't. They came out strongly. They actually, and it wasn't just that Chelsea were bad. It was Arsenal like they had zip about. I mean, the first goal was superb. It was kind of the execution that we'd seen a lot this season from Arsenal. And then it was on with the second goal where they realised they didn't have to be so exact against this Chelsea. But they could really have destroyed them. And we asked Mikel Arteta about this after the game, where he denied it, but I suppose he would. He resorted to his customary talk about kind of focusing on the next task. But you do get the sense a little bit with Arsenal, given there'd been so much build-up to the Manchester City game, and I think that definitely influenced the kind of panic we saw in their performances against West Ham and Southampton. And given that the worst happened in the City game, it's almost like because of that, there's been this mental release around the squad, and they're kind of back to being what they were. And maybe it's that shift as well. I mean, even though Arsenal had gone back top briefly, there is all momentum and impetus with City. So kind of it's their title to lose now. It does feel like there's been a bit of a shift around Arsenal. You hear that as well from some people close to the squad. And it's why, even though Newcastle are favourites for this game, they might be back to playing a quite formidable Arsenal. Granted, it's one still without Saliba. But then that was another big decision that Arteta made on Tuesday in leaving out Holding. With Newcastle, it's a slightly odd one that they've been... It's almost like they've had a few kind of knife edge performances in that when they get one, I mean, again, we spoke recently about the Villa game and how that was a shock that came out of nowhere. And of course, that's been surrounded by so many matches where they've just destroyed some teams, particularly Spurs and Everton. And it's almost like as soon as momentum switches and it goes with them, they have this sudden flood, which was in keeping with the atmosphere around the stadium at the moment, post takeover. Again, and it should be stressed about the controversy of that takeover, but I do just wonder then whether given all that, given Arsenal's susceptibility at the back, I'm not sure I'd make Newcastle favourites in that way because of all this. But I think there's a high capacity here for a lot of goals. So I'm going for over 3.5. I'm not really too confident on either side to win, but I think once one goes in, this will be a proper back and forth, especially given the stakes of the game. Arsenal will probably be trying to keep the title race alive if, as we expect, City win. And Newcastle, of course, trying to clinch Champions League. But that brings pressure for them as well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating time there. So Miguel's playing the goal line and overs. And Mark, you are leaning towards the overs as well. But very quickly on the sides, how did you come down with the prices? You obviously felt they were more or less correct, Newcastle and Arsenal.
Yeah, I kind of agree with where Miguel's kind of coming from with Arsenal. I think they are looking quite dangerous at that kind of price. I was kind of interested in Arsenal plus a quarter to begin with. But yeah, if you based it on the whole season, then it's perhaps around about the correct price is really Newcastle very slight favourites. If this was played at a neutral venue, Arsenal would be favourites and reasonably, not strong favourites, but reasonably comfortable favourites at a neutral venue. So no real issue with the prices. And just out of sort of pure interest, I'd rather back goals in this game and having to sort of side of either team, because I think there's vulnerabilities about both, potentially defensively coming into this game. I think Newcastle in the reverse game went to the Emirates and played for a point, defended pretty well, managed that game pretty well, got that 0-0. I think this game is going to be very, very different. The fact it's at St James's Park, the fact Newcastle are playing such sort of free-flowing, expansive, entertaining football right now, I think it's difficult not to see goals in this game. I know they had that lean spell over Christmas, New Year period where they won once in 8, I think it was, but they bounced back with a real bang. 8 wins from 9, almost secure Champions League football now. They scored at least 2 goals in 8 of those victories. The only blip was that no-show at Aston Villa. They scored 13 goals in the last 3 games, and they're absolutely savaging some sides as well. You know, they look really, really good going forward. And whether it's intentional or not, I'm not sure, but the handbrake just seems to have been released a little bit since mid-January and that sort of poor run, because they've only kept 1 clean sheet in 13. But in that 9-game sequence, they scored 2.89 goals per game on average, which is really, really impressive. Overs has landed in 8 of 9. And to me, it looks like the right way to go again here, backing a goal-heavy game, because, credit to Arsenal. I thought they were really good midweek against Chelsea. Sorry, I think after the City match, you know, there's probably a fair suggestion that they could start to tail off, you know, such a big defeat and in such a big game. But they responded brilliantly. I know Chelsea are Chelsea these days, but they went for the throat, played some really good stuff, and made a few changes, freshened things up. And looked really good again. But Saliba's absence, we've talked about it extensively throughout the season, is enormous. But they also might be going into the battle now without Gabriel also, who picked up a knock in midweek too, which would be very damaging. And look, Arsenal haven't kept consistent clean sheets since the World Cup, just 5 in 20 Premier League games. So I do expect them to concede at St James's. They've leaked at least twice in 7 of 13, and they've also conceded twice or more in 5 of 6 away at the top 8. So fully expect Newcastle to oblige, but you also fully expect Arsenal to do so as well. They've only fired 2 blanks all season. All their key forwards are fit and available. And if you look at Arsenal's matches, of their last 13, 12 have gone over 2.5 goals, as have 13 of their 16 against the top half as well. So I think this has got the makings of being quite a fun affair. I'm not quite as aggressive as Miguel, but I think you can get over 2 3/4 at around about 1.83. I think that's absolutely fair enough. Make a half stakes profit if there's exactly 3 goals, a full stakes if there's 4 or more goals. The only way you lose your money is if there's 0, 1 or 2 goals. I'd be surprised if this game sort of fails to ignite.
Okay, yeah, both guys going in the overs angle. We'll go a little bit more aggressive in the pod near the end of the season and go with Miguel at over 3.5 goals at 2.66. But it does seem to be set up Sunday afternoon for a classic between Newcastle and Arsenal. We will go to a third game that we're going to cover of the marquee games. This is West Ham versus Manchester United, a game originally scheduled for 12:30. It's the BT game, but moved because of the King's coronation to Sunday at 7 o'clock. Some people might be wondering that weird kickoff time. But we'll take a look at the betting that we have on Matchbook.com. West Ham, who are going to be in Europa Conference League action on Thursday, are 3.4 here. Manchester United 2.14. The draw is available at 3.9. You can back both teams to score yes. They're heavily favoured in this market at 1.6, and these are early prices, so that will come in a little bit. The Asian handicap line sees West Ham get a 1/4 goal head start, and the total in this game is currently set at 2.5, and that's shaded a bit towards the over. So Look, Mark, we'll go back to you on this one. West Ham, Manchester United. I touched on the Europa Conference League. It's a massive opportunity for West Ham being in the semi-final of a European competition. How do you bring that into your betting here when you're looking at this game, which is only 4 days out from that game?
I don't consider it. I think that's probably more of a scenario to consider next weekend when West Ham are playing away at Brentford in between the two legs. I think they'll be fully focused on the job at hand, which is Premier League safety. Finding West Ham hard to get a finger on at the minute because since that impressive win at Bournemouth, they played well in a home defeat to Liverpool. Then they go down 4-3 at Palace in what was a brilliant game for the neutral, but it could have been much, much uglier for West Ham, who only really threatened from set pieces and were largely battered in that match. And then, things start to look really, really worrying when you go to Man City and have to send Rice, Aguerd and Souček home early because of illness. You have to change your shape, change your tactical approach late on. But I thought they competed really well for the most part of that game too. And then you lose Soufal to injury as well in the second half. So, we don't know the status of these guys right now, but coming into the weekend, you could easily be missing, basically the spine of your team in this match, which would be a really critical blow. We need results really, because this is United this weekend. Brentford away. You mentioned those Europa Conference ties as well, and they finish with Leeds and Leicester, both under new management. Both will expect to be better versions of the side we currently know. So it's not going to be easy for West Ham, who, if you look at their recent form, it's just so erratic. I'll just read you their results since the start of 2023. Draw, loss, win. Draw, lost. Win, loss, draw. Win, loss, win. Draw, win, loss, lost. So they've won back-to-back games once all season, and their longest unbeaten run is 3 games. 51% of their overall points have been earned at home to teams in 10th and below, and they're winless, having lost 7 of 10 matches against the top 6. So, originally I wanted them to be quite competitive in this match, but I think it's very team news dependent. I think United are there to be got at without Varane and Martinez. I know Lindelof's been playing quite well in their place, but United have failed to win 9 of 16 away. They've only won twice by 2 goals or more on their travels, which shows they don't tend to dominate when playing away. But United's record against the Leicester Lights is really impressive. They've won 11, drawn twice, and lost 0 games against the bottom 8. They've kept 11 clean sheets in that sample and won all 6 away trips to the bottom 8 as well. So that's really, really impressive. And I just think team news wise, I'm quite happy to leave this alone, see how West Ham shake up before the kickoff, because go back to 2 of their recent performances at the London Stadium. They've given Arsenal and Liverpool some really tough goings over. So there's no reason why they can't give United a similar workout if they're at close to full strength. But with those key players missing, it could be very different. But so for this selection, I've actually sort of ignored the 1x2 and the handicaps. I've gone to go with under 3 goals at 1.84. Only loses if there's 4 goals or more in this game. 13 of West Ham's 17 at home have featured fewer than 4. Only 4 of United's 17 since the World Cup have featured 4 or more. 6 of the last 7 have gone under 2.5. BTS No has actually banked in 9 of the last 10. And if you look at United's trips to the bottom half, 8 of 9 went under 2.5. None of those 9 games featured 4 goals or more either. So, I wonder whether this might be quite a close competitive contest, but I think it's all down to who's available for West Ham as well.
Okay, yeah, maybe keep an eye on team news closest to kickoff. Miguel, you're a little bit more confident on the 1x2 and you've gone for Manchester United. I guess you're just looking at the pound for pound, and you'd also possibly be looking at some of that team news that Mark alluded to, because I can't remember last time Declan Rice missed a game for West Ham.
Yeah, well, and also I think if we're going on the general evidence of the season, which now to be fair, it's been an erratic season for West Ham, but still in a game like this, how Moyes is going to set up. And that United had been for a lot of the season with some performances that were more like the Villa game, I would have gone quite low scoring and probably maybe a narrow Manchester United win. But just given I've been to a few United games lately, that they're not quite crawling towards the end of the season anymore, given their fixture list has eased a bit. And that West Ham, given their issues, given they've been so back and forth, I actually think this has the potential for a few more goals at least. I do think, given the pressures on West Ham, United will win. United seem to have ground out a bit of a knack of it. They should have beaten Spurs, but that's where there are a few alarm bells in terms of the defence, given they conceded those 2 so easy. And it wasn't just that they conceded 2, actually. It was more so the amount of chances Spurs created against them in a game that should have been won. I think Lindelof has actually been better without Maguire beside him, but it's still not their first choice centre-half pairing. And I'm going to go, my thinking is almost United to score, but also concede. So I'm going to go United win, but over 1.5.
Okay, yeah, it's currently available at 2.4 if you wanted a boost on the 1x2 markets. As a podcast selection, we're going to sit out this one given the uncertainty of that team news in West Ham, but do keep an eye close to kickoff and maybe go with one of the guys' selections. And both of those selections will be available on insights.matchbook.com from Thursday afternoon if you do want to check that out or need a little reminder of what the guys have put up. So we'll move on to the final game we're covering on the bank holiday Monday. It's 3 o'clock. Or the only game we're covering on the bank holiday Monday. It's Fulham versus Leicester, and big game for Leicester City here. We'll take a look at the betting that we have at matchbook.com, and you can back Fulham at 2.8 here. Leicester City favoured in this market at 2.68. The draw is available at 3.65. Both teams to score, yes. 1.71 is the favourite in that market. The Asian handicap line is effectively a draw no bet market, and pretty similar prices here. Leicester, the marginal favourites at 1.94, and the total is 2.5, shaded a good bit this time towards the over. So Miguel, yeah, take it away there. People may be surprised to see Leicester City favourite here based on this season's form, but I guess you look at the two teams on paper. That Leicester City team, even watched the Monday night at times with James Maddison and Jamie Vardy, it just felt that they had a superior team to Everton, yet they still only got a draw out of the game.
Yeah, and Vardy's also returned to scoring. I mean, I think the draw was maybe reflective of some lingering issues with the Leicester team, as well as the pressures, as well as Dean Smith adapting to it, but also it shouldn't be overlooked, a real kind of very necessary defiance to Everton there, because had they lost that, then we were talking about a season really going into tailspin. So I think it was more to be born more of those circumstances. I do think Leicester are on an upward curve again. Fulham have been, you couldn't go as far as saying one of the revelations of the season, given they didn't get past United in the FA Cup. It's petered out a little, but they've also recorded, they've kind of arrested one of those old classic Alan Kirbishley Charlton end the seasons, where they were kind of doing well for so long, only to just to taper off once they were safe. And there's been a bit of life about them, and I think this will feeding into that. It'll be a proper back and forth. Leicester, the team with something to play for, which create an urgency on their part, and I think maybe actually could be the difference. But I'm actually going for the safer option of, if it can be called that, of over 2.5, because I think in keeping with a lot of these games down in the bottom half that we have discussed, or where there is a team threatened by survival in one of these games. I think it'll go back and forth, and over 2.5. Leicester seem to be scoring again.
Yeah, and Mark, on that point, Leicester seem to be scoring. They will go for this because it's a massive opportunity for 3 points. You're on the same bet here, over 2.5 goals.
Yeah, I think it's one of the better bets on the Premier League coupon this weekend. That Monday night match against Everton was terrific fun, but Leicester nearly blew it all. I thought Everton put them under real pressure. They're a great threat on set pieces and the counter-attack as well. And actually that match produced the highest expected goals total in the Premier League this season. I think it was around 6.7, which was quite a distance more than the next best so far this season. I know there was 2 penalties involved, but it was great fun. And Leicester games since Brendan Rodgers has been sacked have been good fun. Leicester have refound their attacking buzz, if you like. And in the 4 Premier League games since his sacking, they've generated an XG tally of 2.0 or greater on all 4 occasions, averaging 2.61 expected goals and 9.75 shots in the box. Before Rodgers was sacked, they were averaging just 1.2 XG across 30 Premier League games. They had 2.0 XG or more on only 4 occasions, 4 from 30, yet they're 4 from 4 without him. So a big improvement. Obviously playing Leeds and Everton helps your cause in that sense. But as you guys have said, Vardy's sort of refound his mojo. He's looked really, really sharp. Soumare's come into that midfield and looked good. Sionchu's even come back into the team. And Everson's got the gloves now as well, which I expected him to start the season, actually. He was exceptional in the Championship last season. So good to see him getting given an opportunity to stake his claim. But you're playing Fulham now, 7 defeats in 9. They've dropped down the table. Marco Silva is still adamant that they're not on the beach, and he's kind of reacted quite angrily to those sort of suggestions. I kind of believe him, to be fair, because I thought we saw more than enough against Man City last weekend and more than enough against Liverpool on Wednesday to suggest that there's still life in this Fulham team. They were very competitive for the most part in both games. Really probably could have got something out of the game at Liverpool midweek and missed some good opportunities. Alisson made some good saves. And I think just being the sort of penultimate home game of the season, I don't expect Fulham to be passive here. I think they'll come out and play, come out for a battle, really. And I think they'll engage Leicester. and I think we'll have a decent spectacle. Fulham have only kept 3 clean sheets at home. Leicester just 3 clean sheets away. Leicester still haven't kept a clean sheet since the World Cup break, which is the only team across Europe's top 5 leagues to do so. But as we keep saying, Leicester are very front foot at the minute, and they're very capable of scoring a couple themselves. So you expect Fulham to score at Craven Cottage almost always. Overs has landed in 12 of 17 at home for them. 11 of those have seen both teams scoring. Overs has landed in 11 of 17 Leicester away. BTS occurring at the same rate as well. If you exclude the bottom 6, 11 of Leicester's 12 away games have gone over 2.5 goals already. So, yeah, I really like the look of that again at 1.87. I think it's a really nice price. I make it much shorter than that.
Okay, yeah, agreement with the guys, over 2.5. Very strong opinions there. We're going to lock that in as a bet on the podcast, and we'll move on to our Matchbook Zero section. So this is going to replace our long shot. So a little bit of the guys looking for that zero margin. Again, these Matchbook Zero is available on just the win market. So a good one for maybe if you're backing an underdog, or perhaps, Mark, if you want to lay a team to not win the game here. So as one thing you can do, the back and the lay prices are exactly the same here. You're going to see Salford versus Gillingham in League 2, and you're going to lay the favourites.
Yeah, a terrific final day in store from League 2. Promotion and the playoffs are still up for grabs. Salford right in the mix. They can't win promotion this weekend. They can't finish in the top 3. They look pretty solid to finish in the top 7. They've got a 4-goal better goal difference than Mansfield and 3 points better off Mansfield in 8th. Salford, I think, in 5th. So the Ammies, basically a point will do for them to finish in the playoffs. 3 points will guarantee it, obviously. But even if they lose, I think it'd be a surprise if they dropped out of the top 7. But I think they've been kind of artificially shortened here because the market assumes they need to go all out to secure a playoff place. And I don't think that is the case. Mansfield are away at Colchester, which is a tricky tie for your final day of the season, especially when you need to probably win by 2 or 3 goals. Salford have won 3 on the spin. They've won 6 of the last 9, but they've ridden themselves a lot of luck actually of late. In 3 of those matches, they've scored really, really late goals to secure victories. I'm talking like deep into stoppage time. So you could conceivably be talking about a team that's only won 3 of the last 9 if football sort of worked the other way. Yet they're 1.5 around that mark to be a Gillingham team who have been very strong since the winter takeover, since their January signings. They've secured survival ages ago. They've had nothing to play for a while, but they still went to Bradford, another playoff team, in their last away day and picked up a very well-earned point. Their squad is much, much stronger since the window. They've actually returned the 3rd most points in League 2 since the new signings came into the side. They've only lost 6 of 22 games. I just think Neil Harris is the kind of character to sort of drive one last performance out of his team. They'll be quite keen to be the sort of party poopers for Salford. So I'm expecting them to put in a strong performance and make life difficult for a Salford side who don't really need to win this game. So 1.5 just felt very, very short. Quite happy to lay them at that price.
Yeah, Mark's going to lay Salford there 1.5, around 1.51 versus Gillingham. And again, check out Matchbook Zero 48 hours before these games, and you'll invariably find the best price with the 0% commission and 0% margin. And it's Premier League, Miguel, for you. And look, Chelsea have been in free fall. Frank Lampard's last 20 games as manager, 1 win, 2 draws, 17 defeats. So you're picking them to lose again on Saturday.
Yeah, and maybe go 7 in this run, 7 defeats. Yeah. And then in terms of Lampard's greater run, something that's all the more damning, and it could be a Premier League record, top flight record then. You would think, and given that Bournemouth are notionally a more forgiving side, that this is one where Chelsea correct themselves. Except I was at the game on Tuesday night. From everything you hear around Chelsea right now, where there's just this kind of the entire club really, or certainly in the football side, is in a funk. It's almost like they need the clarity of the next manager being appointed. Nothing about the team works right now. I have to say, shocked about some of the tactical setups, some of the decisions, and overlook the fact Bournemouth are ahead of them in the table. I think, given how safe they are, given how Bournemouth's season have gone, they'll just take this game in their stride, nothing to lose, where there'll be this weird pressure on Chelsea because of the fact it's supposed to be a winnable game in this run. And I think this could be one of those, yet another game this season that we end up describing as a nadir for Chelsea, because this can still get worse, especially on the evidence of what happened on Tuesday night.
Okay, yeah, Bournemouth are around 3.6 to beat Chelsea at home. Does seem quite big on current form. If you take away the club's name, maybe you will look at potentially backing that, and you can back that up to £20, as we mentioned. Matchbook Zero, full details of all that is available in the description. We'll move on to EFL European bet section, which will just be a European bet section this week. Miguel, we might go to you on this one, on the Spanish Cup final. Tell us a little bit about Osasuna. For those that haven't seen you writing, you wrote a great article, I think, back in October about the club there in general. They're definitely your Spanish team, but talk to us a little bit about this Spanish Cup final.
Yeah, and a bit of, I suppose this is where the name comes from. My mother's Spanish, obviously, and from Navarra. So the local team are Osasuna. They've never won a trophy in their history, but have always been a club respected for... it's a classic, very difficult place to go. If in a different way we think about it, in English or Irish terms. Funny enough, actually, they've had more English and Irish players than any other team in Spain by the big two, including Michael Robinson, who of course made a famous career in Spain. Ashley Grimes, who's played for Manchester United. I mean, it was for a time, especially around a decade ago, when Messi's Barcelona and Ronaldo's Madrid at their peak, both had bad results from a fair few times at Osasuna. They were a little bit of a kind of a Stoke of the Spanish league since then. Almost went out of business half a decade ago, but that proves the kind of one of these classic crux moments in the history of the club where they refocused everything around the academy, which was always quite strong, but this saw a real emphasis for it. And also they're one of Spain's four fan or socio-owned clubs, along with the three three of the most famous, in Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Athletic Bilbao, their local rivals. So there's a real kind of, both because of the way the team is built, which is on so many academy graduates, and because of the fan base, because of the only team in the area, there's a real kind of collective to the team that's come across in so many performances. They start to play a more expansive style. They are going for the first trophy in their history. This is only their second major final, and of course it's against the most difficult of all, Spain's most dominant team in history, and the current European champions, potential European champions again, Real Madrid. It's going to be difficult, but given the spirit around it, they played a B team in midweek, Osasuna, and only lost 1-0 away to Barcelona, all in preparation of this. So I think they're going to give Madrid a really difficult game. I couldn't go so far as saying they're winning just because the way these things go, given this is Madrid and they're canning this in cup competitions this way. But I do think it'll be one of those games that goes that everything is thrown at it. So I'm going to go for under 2.5. I can see a 1-0 either way. Maybe if Osasuna are to win, it'll probably through keeping Madrid tight and claiming kind of a smash and grab. At the same time, if Madrid win, I think Osasuna will be competitive enough that they're going to make it difficult for them. So at best a 1-0 or 2-0. So under 2.5 or 2.3 seems a kind of I think the calculated bet here.
Okay, and best of luck to Osasuna in that game. And it's interesting scheduling, as we touched on there, with Real Madrid playing Tuesday as well. So they might ease off if they do get that 1 or 2 goal lead, making unders the play there. 2.3 the current price. Check that out. Copa del Rey final on matchbook.com. And look, from one European domestic cup competition, Mark, to a team that's qualified for another, and Frankfurt got through to the German Cup final last night. They're back in action in the Bundesliga, and their league form's been a bit iffy recently. And I'm guessing that is the angle for your bet here in the Bundesliga. Yeah,
100% keen to oppose them. I did so last week in the long shot section when they hosted Augsburg and crawled to a 1-1 draw there. So they're 5 points off European qualification with 4 games to play, but they have an inferior goal difference, which effectively makes it 6 points. Leverkusen are showing real form as well, so it looks hard for them to overturn that deficit domestically. So, but in the DFB Pokal, they reached the final on Wednesday night after beating Stuttgart 3-2 in a real ding-dong battle. That has been their priority for a while. It's another chance at silverware. It's another chance of European qualification. And I think, quite understandably, they might be a few tired limbs, a few tired brains after a few beers were soaked on Wednesday night. And they have disappointed, actually, for the large part. There are only 2 wins in the last 14 across all competitions have come in the Pokal. They've lost almost half of those fixtures, just the 1 clean sheet in 14. In the Bundesliga since the World Cup, it's 3 wins from 16. So, recently they've had a few tough away days, but actually when they've been playing at home, 3 of the last 4, They've hosted Bochum, Stuttgart, and Augsburg, all sort of strugglers at the bottom end of the table. They failed to win any of them. So I don't fancy their chances of turning over Hoffenheim away from home from the Wednesday-Saturday turnaround after a cup semi-final when you've just reached the final. You've only won 4 times on your travels all season in the Bundesliga. So I think there's a fair argument to say that they won't be at their best in this game. There's rumours circulating around Oliver Glasner's future as head coach as well, which I don't think is too helpful. So you can take Hoffenheim here at 1.78 with a 0-goal start, which is really appealing to me with the draw on side. Hoff are desperate for the points. They're only above the bottom 2 by 2 points, only above the relegation playoff place by 1. It's incredibly tight down there, but they've shown improvements under Matarazzo, the former Stuttgart coach who's come in. They've had quite a tough schedule in the last 4 games, playing Bayern and Leipzig, lost narrowly to Leipzig, held Bayern. Actually, their only defeat, other than the one against Bayern under Matarazzo, came against Köln, which is basically the only time they've fallen flat and really disappointed under his management. They've won 3 times, drawn against Bayern, and obviously lost those games to Köln and Leipzig. So they've got players who can do damage. Kramaric, De Boer, Bebu, Baumgartner. There's players there who can score goals. And if they score here, I don't see them losing because it will require Frankfurt to score at least twice. And just fancy Hoffenheim to get something out of this game. And I think the prices allow it, considering the circumstances.
Okay, throwing a bet there. Hoffenheim effectively 1.78 versus Frankfurt. We'll move on to podcast best bets here. And Miguel, take it away. It's a bet we've actually touched on at the start. It's the Big Sam bet here. And the bounce covering both angles of a City hammering or maybe Leeds to sit in for 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's what appeals to me about it, in that it just has enough either side and adds, I suppose, an extra intrigue to the game, given that possibility. And I suppose maybe it is the last hope for the title race in that card. I suppose they've still got Dyche's Everton to go, but I mean, I'd actually have more confidence in Allardyce's Leeds right now as regards that. And I think that's what appeals to me about it. As well as, I mean, it could just be, if not, it's a relatively highish price for what could be a City 4 or 5-0 as well.
Exactly, covering both angles there. We got 1.89 currently, both teams to score now. Best bet on the card. And Mark, your best bet is taking on something you were speaking about there in your last bet about the Bundesliga relegation battle. So take it away here. It's a both teams to score yes angle.
Yeah, big match at the bottom on Saturday. Must win, really, for Hertha Berlin, who are 6 points away from safety with just 4 games to play. They're hosting Stuttgart, who lost that semi-final in the Pokal on Wednesday night to Frankfurt 3-2, very much in keeping with their season so far. Scoring goals, looking dangerous going forward, but totally erratic and disorganised defensively. They have improved, actually, under Sebastian Hoeneß, 8 points from 4 Bundesliga games, but he's getting a tune out of them. But I just think, again, tired legs, tired minds after a semi-final on Wednesday before a quick turnaround on Saturday. It's going to give Hertha an opportunity here. It was kind of bordering on must-win for both teams, and neither team can defend to save their lives at all, really. They've played 60 Bundesliga games between them and managed just 5 clean sheets, 2 for Stuttgart, 3 for Hertha. Yet both have got quite a reasonable record in front of goal. BTTS here is 1.79. 58% of all Bundesliga games have seen BTTS land so far this season, which would give you an implied probability of about 1.72 on just a blanket game. So immediately there's a bit of a value gap there. I just think, it's not going to be a tight and edgy 6-pointer. I think this is, both sides' strengths are in forward areas. They're certainly not defensively. Hertha have scored in 9 of the last 11. They've only failed to score against Leipzig and Bayern. They've scored in all 8 at home against teams in 8th and below. They've scored twice or more in 5 of those. And they've seen BTTS land in all 6 against fellow bottom 5 teams. 60% of their home games overall have seen BTTS. And you've got Stuttgart, who've scored in 12 of 15 Bundesliga games and in 11 of 15 away. They've scored in 15 of 17 against teams in 8th and below, and all 8 of their games against the bottom 6 have seen BTTS land. And no Bundesliga side has seen BTTS land more often than Stuttgart, 70% overall, and that increases to 73% away from home. Yet the 1.79 implies just a 56% chance of a payout here. So, I think goals is the way to go in the capital.
Okay, best bet on the card. Both teams score yes. 1.79 Hertha against Stuttgart. We're done. My thanks to Miguel and Mark O'Haire. We will be back for the Champions League podcast early next week, so do check that out. Looking forward to that. 2 fascinating semi-final ties, and Adrian will be back with us for then. Until then, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the King's Coronation and all the football around there. But take care, and we'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.